We got a guest on tonight, fellas, all the way over in Australia on Thursday afternoon. How wild is that? Kurt, what is going on, man?
Yeah, just here from the future, boys. And I've made a mistake straight away. I have a sparkling water because, like you said, it's the morning. But I cracked it before the show, so I'm sorry. I can't give you the crackle sound effect.
That's okay. That's okay. Here, I'll do it for you.
Yeah.
There you go. Crack me if you got it.
And that's okay. Ant's over there drinking sparkling water as well. That's what the Bubblies in Canada are.
They're damn good too, man. Like we should try to get a sponsorship from Bubbly. I would take freebie Bubbly.
Yeah, I probably drink 3 or 4 Bubblies a day.
But I got to drive.
The amount of different beverages we've had on our show trying to get sponsors. We're 0 from 12 at the moment, but we'll keep trying.
Well, hey, it took us a little while, but we have a nice seltzer sponsor, vodka seltzer sponsor from Drip. That's a double R Drip.
Hey, you know what I always like to say? If I'm going to get something inside me, it's going to be a drip.
Shameless promotion.
But it kind of fell into itself. So like I said, we got Kurt from the Outback QB podcast all the way from Australia, man. We appreciate you taking some time out of your busy day. We know, like I said, it's afternoon there for you, and we're going to kind of just shift and move all over the place a little bit. We might go away from Cowboys news. We might just go down the deep, dark alleyway and find a Kansas City Chiefs fan we're talking to. Kurt, we got to dive into that. That's the team you support, right?
It is the team I support. Obviously been a pretty fruitful 6 years, but with that comes a lot of hate. You know, I've got a target on my back now, and our listeners constantly write in and abuse me for choosing the Chiefs and calling me a bandwagon supporter because they're good all of a sudden. So it's been an ordeal.
The good thing the one thing, we're on your team, man. We were probably the few guys that were cheering for the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, because the only thing worse than a Cowboys loss is an Eagles win. So we definitely weren't cheering for the Eagles to win the Super Bowl. I was acting like I was a Chiefs fan. So I was feeling the pain, secondary pain for the Chiefs during the last Super Bowl.
Yeah, we were feeling the pain for the first quarter and a half, and then when it was already out of the grass, we were like, okay, well now we're just gonna
the Band-Aid was pulled.
Have fun here.
The Band-Aid was pulled.
Yeah, it was brutal. I mean, there's no real logic to it, but my most hated team, and this is true, is the Philadelphia Eagles. I know it should be the Raiders or the Broncos or whatever, but I can't stand the Eagles. Nick Sirianni is a big part of that, so I think I fit in on the show in that regard. And when it was Chiefs Eagles, I mean, I was nervous. You never want your team to lose a Super Bowl, but certainly not to a team that you hate. And we had our first live show, 100 people at a local pub, listeners, family, friends, and I and my parents, who both came, were the only people in red. And I asked them to wear red, even though they know nothing about football. So I was on my own, man. And the crowd was happy, but I was struggling.
Well, were you kind of like this when you set it up? Look, I mean, I know it's going to be live, but there's no way it's going to be a blowout game. Like, even if we lose, it's got to be close, right? Last minute touchdown by the Eagles. So it's going to be okay.
That's right. Yeah, I think I tipped the Chiefs by 3. It was going to be a thriller. I convinced my dad to wear red because I'm like, the Chiefs are good. And then I interviewed him on the show at 3 after the third quarter, and all he said to end his interview was, "Kurt, I am never following your advice." That was it.
That's what happened. I was telling you pre-show that we did all of the playoff games, literally every playoff game that we were looking at and deciding who we're going for. The other team won.
Yeah.
So we were saying, like, NA will never cheer for the Philadelphia Eagles. It doesn't matter who they go up against. If it's the Giants versus Eagles, we're Giants fans. When it was Washington versus the Eagles, we weren't cheering for Washington. We were just not cheering for the Philadelphia Eagles. We were cheering against them. So we lost every single
if someone was betting against us on if someone would have just bet against us on everything, they would have walked away with a nice sum of money, because we did awful. Every team we wanted to win lost. It wasn't great. But AJ, I know it's going to be kind of a show where we jump around a bit. Was there anything that you wanted to dive into specifically?
Yeah. Well, first, hey, I think Kansas City Chiefs, everyone and their moms has heard about these guys for a long time. My biggest question that I have at this point is, where are the Chiefs, Kurt? Because we don't talk a lot about other teams on this podcast, right? So I want to open that up right away and just kind of rip the Band-Aid off and say, we're going to be hitting you up for information here just across the board. But for the Kansas City Chiefs, Are they in rebuild mode, or is it hinging on a few players and what they decide to do? What's the state of Chiefs Nation? I don't know. What is it? What's it called? Chiefs Nation?
Chiefs Kingdom.
Chiefs Kingdom.
Yeah. It's a good question. We talked about this on the Outback QB podcast the other day because it's been 6 years of crazy success, right? And there's only so many years that you can stay at that level.
I think six might be the max.
I think 6 might be the max
in this year, in this day and age. Yeah.
And the whole narrative last year, and it turned out to be true because they got smashed in the Super Bowl, was the Chiefs have gotten lucky. They're lucky to be where they are, the way they were playing in the regular season, week after week. Yeah, they were winning, but were they just the Vikings from the year before, where the close calls and the little lucky things went their way at the end of games? And turns out that, yeah, they made it to the Super Bowl, but they weren't ready to compete. So we don't know. It's the big unknown. Are they going to compete again? Can they top up again? Can Andy Reid and co continue to get more out of this roster than actually exists? Because that's what they've done. And every time you look at it, there's holes. Do they need more help with offensive weapons? Is their running back room good enough to compete? Probably not. The O-line worries me. We've got an uneven defense. We've got guys like McDuffie, but then big holes in other areas. Guys like Karl Aftis, Chris Jones, but then a big drop-off. So I think it's like a 10, 11 win season at the moment and see what they can do in the playoffs. But I could be wrong. They could tank. What do you guys think?
Hey, if you get 10 wins, I mean, that's, I think, still pretty successful. So
yeah, you just got to make it to the dance. You just got to make it into the postseason, and anything could happen. Maybe they would do better as being an underdog than someone that's expected to win.
Yeah.
But I, in my mind, if you have Patrick Mahomes, you're always going to be in it. The NFL is a quarterback-driven league. All the rules are kind of focused on the offenses playing well. So I think if you have Patrick Mahomes, you can still draft some players and still 100% be in the Super Bowl contender conversation come September.
My biggest fear with the Chiefs and having Mahomes, and I'm assuming Kelsey is staying on for another year. Is that debatable? Yeah. So he will be on. Is them finding a stud wide receiver, because it always seems like they're kind of playing with, I don't know, basically worst wide receiver core than the Dallas Cowboys, if I'm going to compare. And I'm not speaking, highly of the Dallas Cowboys wide receiver core. So
I hope not.
No, it just seems like I don't even know that there's a true number one.
Well, at least
wide receiver on the Chiefs. So
it would be Kelsey, or it was Kelsey.
It was Kelsey at one point as a receiver. But if they do go out there and pick up a wideout, then I think they're right back up there in terms of offensive production.
Sorry, man. I was going to say wide receiver before, but it's always a confusing one, right? Because they've got Rashee Rice, who did the LCL last year and missed most of the season. When he was playing, he was putting up wide receiver one production, even though to look at him, he's not a prototypical wide receiver one. But if you have him and Worthy showed enough, does a full season of Rice and Worthy put together a wide receiver room that you're happy with? Probably.
Yeah.
Can I tell you my number one concern? And there's one name on the roster that I just can't believe is still there. It's Juwan Taylor, the right tackle. I mean, this guy is the most penalized dude in the league for the last 3 years. He constantly lines up offside. I genuinely don't think he knows what the rule is. And anytime something goes wrong with the Chiefs, you can predict it was Taylor who did it. And, Joe Tooney gets moved on from that O-line, and Juwan Taylor's still there. I can't believe it.
Well, that's funny. We have a right tackle problem too, so I think we're finding some commonality.
But not but our right tackle problem is not necessarily penalties as much.
That's just poor play.
He sucks balls. He just sucks balls.
Yeah.
He just sucks balls. Let's just say that sucks balls.
He's got sucky balls and a big contract.
Sucks those balls with the big contract.
Well, the contract is a big issue. And that back on the Taylor comment there, I've watched a bunch of Chiefs games last year, and there was a lot of times that he got away with starting early. Like he would always be stepping back early, and I'm like, oh, that's going to be a penalty, and they would miss it. So it's like, he was very noticeable. Him and Lane Johnson, I think, were two of the most noticeable guys that got away with kind of starting a little bit too early.
Dude, imagine if they picked him up every time, he'd be setting records.
Oh,
he's doubling the records for penalties.